Welcome everyone. I'm going to record this, not for a stream, but just to local file, and we'll see if we can share this. The reason we're doing this is because we basically all are rusty. There's a lot of new people in 2PL that asked me a lot of questions in the last couple of weeks about which fax to buy and why, and when to use it, especially now with all the crabbing fleet going on. And the FC asked me for, do you have an active fax, and then not knowing what it means. So we're just going over all that stuff. It will probably take like half an hour. We'll take questions in the end and just make a little discussion if you like. Not sure if we're actually going to do real practice like jumping, but we can probably do that. First of all, there's a couple of people here that know more about faxes than me. That's Mr. Rive and Lucas. MS Stricker is also very good, but he's probably as rusty as me. If I make any mistake, feel free to correct me. Just jump in and go for it. I don't want to do very lengthy discussions about details, but just like generalization. If I make an error, just correct me, because I'm as rusty as most of you.
Yeah, also Neddy's probably the best person to contact for current information, because I haven't been doing anything fax related, so.
Yeah, I've been on all the crabbing fleets and using my Oracle as a fax machine for a lot of things, but now the Ninatsu is there. It's actually quite good fun. Alright, first things first. There's two different types of faxes basically, which are used in fleets, and that is not the difference between armor and shield, but it's the difference between having an active wrapping, self-wrapping fax or a buffer fax. The difference is in a big cup fight, when there's like lots of Titans and MTECO and X47 kind of engagements, a self-wrapping fax does not have any buffer, and it will be alpha away. That is why the Apostle is the fax of choice for armor fleets. It has 3 plates. If you look in the MO2D, there's the proper fit. The one I handed out has 2 plates and a hull energizer. That is an older fit, but the fit in fleet is fine to just import into your whatever EVMON or EFT or fitting tool that you use. The buffer one is actually able to survive 1 DD. That is also why in Titan fleets you make buddies, because you want to kill dreads and faxes basically in one go, and 1 DD not always does it, especially with the hull energizer that was used prior. So you team up with a buddy and then kill it. The fax, the armor fax, the buffer fax for cap fleets has 2 big reasons to be in that engagement. One is soak up damage. As long as there's faxes on grid, wrapping a primary Titan or super carrier, whatever, that super carrier or Titan is probably not going to die, so the enemy has to focus on killing faxes. And we've seen in the past that as long as you bring more faxes than the enemy, you will in the end hold the field and win the fight. So that's one thing, soak up damage. The other one is actually wrapping a target. Now, if you go into triage, you cannot receive any reps. So putting every single fax into triage is not always optimal, because you cannot wrap each other. The only thing you can do is sit on grid, wrap some stuff, soak damage, and probably die after 2 DD volleys. So in a cap fight, when there is time, the triage FCs will normally put faxes in groups, like everyone from A to J, starting with a character named A to J will be in fax group 1, K to O will be fax group 2, and then B to Z will be fax group 3. And then you jump in, you end up with 25% cap, and only one of the groups will go into triage, and the other will just sit there and cap up, also soak damage. But the fun is, because they're not in triage, they can actually broadcast for reps. So if dreads decide to start engaging foxes, they're able to soak damage and receive remote caps from the triage group that is actually in triage at that moment. Coordinating that is, with tie-dye, pretty doable, but it's intense. It's something that you actually want to experience once or twice. It's good fun, but it can be very stressful. Just yeah, go.
I was going to say, from experience as well, one of the worst things you can do in those kind of fights is just do your own thing and just go off and start triaging without any, you know, question to do so,
Yeah.
because you end up fucking everybody over, including yourself. So it's really important that you get those triage sequences down pat. And it can be the difference from losing an entire triage fleet to not losing a single triage carrier. So it's really important.
Yeah, and it's not a problem if you make a mistake and you assign yourself in group 2 instead of group 1, and then just do whatever group 1 does. But if everyone starts doing that, that's a problem. But normally, you've got an active triaged group that is handing out reps and keeping the fleet alive, and the enemy has to focus and try to identify the triage caps and kill those and keep on going. That is why you will not have one fax in the staging system NSI at this moment, but you always want a second one, because if you die, you want to jump in your second one and just go back in, because in the end, if you have more faxes than the enemy, you will hold the grid and win the fight. The second type of fax is the active red one, and there's a couple of different options. There's the LIF and the Ninatsu. They have a bonus to actually choose between armor reps and shield reps, remote. They have a bonus for self-wrapping, the Ninatsu for armor and the LIF for shield. But the remote reps can be either, and that's pretty nice to use, because if you're in a crab fleet and you have a LIF and you can actually self-wrap in shield and remote wrap in shield, you're doing fine. The problem with the LIF is, to achieve what the Ninatsu can do, you have to pimp it. And I'll show you the fit that I'm using, because I love flying pimp faxes. But it's too expensive, and after a long discussion, and it's been going on for years, but especially after the latest fax changes, Rive has been pondering and theory crafting and doing a lot of thought work, and came up with a fit for the Ninatsu. And that Ninatsu is armor wrapping locally with 2 local reps and an ancillary wrap that runs on paste, and it can fit either remote shield wraps or remote armor wraps. It means that if you go into the grab fleet, which is normally shield based, you're on your own, but that thing can tank 40-50 Feroxes. Not too sure about the Kikimoras, because nuke pressure is it's amazing what the Kikimoras can do. But for PL, the ship to use when an FC asks for an active fax, which is a fax that can self-wrap, is the Ninatsu. I'm not sure if I can fly it. I think I can. Yes, I can. I'll link that one in fleet now.
Do needs really matter when you're running 5 cat boosters?
Yes, they absolutely do. Because I mean, the Ninatsu, one thing that he didn't mention is the LIF is a lot easier to fly than the Ninatsu, from what I can tell. Because the Ninatsu it's not cap stable with 5 heavy cap boosters, right? You have to juggle constantly, and it's not just that you have to juggle the cap boosters, it's the fact that you can only fit, like, I've got 23 in my hold right now, which means I've got to go to my fleet hangar, move them to my cargo hold, and then reload my cap boosters whenever I want to, you know, refill, right? So it gets to the point where juggling cap boosters is really important, and against newts, it's basically a question of you run one cap booster, run whatever you want, a rep or a remote or local rep, and then you run another cap booster, because otherwise you're going to be at 0 cap. So it's much better than not having any cap boosters, but that doesn't mean that it works flawlessly.
Yeah.
Gotcha.
I'll post a live fit in a second because that is pimp. The thing with these heavy cap boosters and the heavy electrical capacitor booster is it can only hold one charge. So it is completely pointless to load it with Navy cap charges. That is just expensive and throwing away money. So in this Ninatsu you just put 60, 70 cap booster 3200s in and not the Navy version.
Yeah, but you can initially load 3200s and keep Navy cap boosters in your fleet hangar to save space.
Because it's uses less, but you never need more than 60 cap boosters, and they're expensive, the Navy ones.
Yeah, one point of this fit is also to be like kinda cheap than another one, because at the end you don't know if you get out alive.
Yeah, I mean, the whole point about the Ninazu is it tanks something like 75-80% as much as a pimp fit lift, but it does it for a sixth of the price. I mean, when I was flying these, if they gave me the hull back, it cost me like 150 mil to fit one out again, right, with insurance. So that's the whole point behind them, is you can throw them away. Fitting 100 cap boosters in your fleet hangar, when you're only spending 100 mil on the whole thing altogether, is ridiculous, right? In prolonged fights, it might be necessary. Like after 10 minutes of constant repping, you will run out of cap boosters. But that's probably not going to happen unless you're in a prolonged fight, right? That's the only reason. That's one of the main reasons why the lift's better, because in actual prolonged, protracted fights, it lasts longer than the Ninazu. But in terms of what we're doing now, which is often crabbing fleets, it's more than enough, right? I mean, I've tanked it.
Sorry, the other trick with cap is if you actually run out of cap boosters, what you should always do is keep a deep space transport in your cargo, in your ship maintenance array, and just fill up the cargo with 3200s. You eject the ship, you use the fleet hangar bay from it, scoop the as many charges as you can at that point, and just scoop the ship again.
Or if you're being a cheap boy like me, you fill it full of 85s, yeah. And then you launch them, and the enemy blows them up, and then you scoop loot from the cargo holds.
Or your friends blow them up for you if you have to.
Mm-hmm.
So you basically, if you check in the fleet hangar, there's nothing. What you have in your fleet hangar is normally a travel fit, and the travel fit is a couple of inertia steps and what's it called?
Hyperspatial accelerators.
The hyperspatials. You have 3 hyperspatials and 2 inertia steps, I think, that fits. I'm not sure with the plate now, because that plate is 4K, so it takes up a lot of fleet hangar space if you want to
I mean, basically, when you have a chance to move, you can always repackage the plates at the beginning, so they only take 1,000.
Yeah. So I guess 2 or 3 hyperspatials, 1 or 2 inertia steps, and a 500 mN microwarp drive. Basically, in the travel fit, it means that you want to like align to somewhere or walk to somewhere, and then single activate, just one cycle, your microwarp drive. The microwarp drive takes 10 seconds to cycle, and with a little bit, depending on your skills and all that stuff, but if it's a good fit, you will actually warp immediately after those 10 seconds, which is far faster than the 26, 27 seconds if you're in a normal fit. putting plates offline will not help your align time. The plates off is only something that's used in wormhole because of mass, but if you offline them, you will not align any faster. If I remember correctly, you can correct me if I'm wrong.
What you can do is overheat the MWD for the 1 cycle.
Yeah, gives you more base speed, so you end up after it cycles down with a higher speed at the moment, and then if you're over 75% of your base speed, then you'll insta warm. That makes it
the
easier.
plates matter like 1 second align time or something like that, so it doesn't really matter too much.
Yeah, and the risk of being dropped on it and then not being able to align them is a problem. That's easier on shield ships because basically the shield faxes only need 1 inertia in the micro drive, and then it's good to go. Also, for those I can't use them, so I will have to switch to. Give me a second, so I'll switch over the recording too. Fleet. This is the Mini Koa, and it does the same as the lift does, and it's really fun. The problem is, it has the same downside as the lift. You have to pimp it to actually use it, but it can tank 70 bombers, and that is like pre whatever Kikimora fleets. So it's one of the best things. But you have to pimp it, and you can only remote shield wrap, and that's why the Liv and the Ninatsu are just better. Going back to Netty. But if you like flying the Mini Koa on the crab fleet, you basically only need shield faxes, and you have an alt that can fly a Mini Koa, then you can just go and go for it. The thing is,
it's worth mentioning though that the Minikawa tank's a lot less than the Ninazu if you don't pimp fit it. Right, so if you just cheap fit in the Minikawa, don't bother. Just buy Ninazu.
Don't do it. That's why. Do I have? Bloody hell! I do have it, but not on Chelsea. 1 sec. Yeah, I forgot it. Where's Chelsea? Switching over there. For those in Shield Dream, which I don't know if it ever happens, but I've got a what's it called, the Minmatar Titan, and I've
Ragnarok.
The Ragnarok. Oh, hold on, I think I've got it. Why did I do that wrong? There, that's the one. That's the one. That is the shield version of the Apostle. So it's buffer. So if there's every FC that asks for shield buffer ships, then this is the thing to use. If you cannot fly an Apostle for some reason, which you should, because you're required to do it, but you can fly a Mini Koa, actually it also will help in capital engagement.
Yeah, especially now with the diminishing return of armor reps and sheet reps, I think it makes even more sense to put in a few Minikawas, especially if you just can't fly any other fax. It's better than nothing at this point.
Yes, I actually remember that Headliner mentioned something about it, that he wants a couple of Mini Koas in whatever capital fleet there is. And if you ask for it, that's the fit to use. It's shield extenders, capital cap booster to cap yourself up, and basically just whatever soak damage and do the same stuff as the Apostle does.
Also, one side note is on this fit it makes sense to have Navy cap boosters because it means you can fit 6 charges into
Instead
the
of
capital
5.
cap booster.
Instead of 5, yeah, correct. Plus, you can take more in your fleet hangar if need be. Are there any questions so far? Anything that pops into your mind and want to know?
How much of a difference is it to have your carry skills up to 4 and not at 5?
Basically, you're not alone. If don't do it if you go into a subcap fleet and you want to fly a Minicoa or a Ninatsu or a Liv. But in an Apostle, it just means that you run out of cap earlier.
So not only run out of cap earlier, but it's also the resistance. Like the carrier gives you 4% or 5% bonus to all armor resistance or shield resistance on Apostle and Minokawa. So it's quite a bit EHP you lose.
Yeah, but if shit hits the fan, let's call it that way, and every single fax is needed, then bringing a level 4 fax is better than bringing none.
Also, if we ever start using combat triage again for support fleets, like, don't be the one that the FC wants to rely on. But if you want to tag along, most people who lead combat triage won't say no. You know, they'll put you in reserve, so to speak, and then at least then you get to learn. It's the best way to learn is just to sit on one of the reserve waves and just watch and observe.
Yeah, I remember. I think this is Providence time, 1.5 years ago, whatever, when we jumped in 5-6 faxes rife, and then exactly the one with fax 4 triaged on his own, and he was the only one dying. And I remember headlining was freaking out because I was convinced that we could tank it, and he couldn't. I was completely baffled. Why is he dying? And then headline asked, why is he dying? And I said, I don't know. And in the end, afterwards, it turned out he had fax 4. So,
yeah, I mean, as well, I mean, it does. Fax are one of those ships where it takes quite a bit of skill once you get to something like that to actually fly well. The buffer between like tanking okay and tanking a shitload is mostly skill after a certain point. So you know, all you can do with that is learn by doing. You know, it's not something that can be taught really. You've just got to learn the best ways around it.
No.
Go.
No, that's not what I mean. For instance, if someone wanted me in an Apostle, one of my tunes has a Mark Carrier 4, but if you gave me the choice between the Apostle and the Nanazu, I would take the Nanazu because have Galante Carrier 5 on that same tune.
Yeah, but the Apostle and the Nanazu are used in 2 different situations. Like, you'd never want to jump an Nanazu into an emergency triage fleet.
Nope, never.
Right? Because you'll just get blacked. So in that situation, Apostle at level 4 is way better than Nanazu with local reps at level 5 because it's just gonna get blacked, right? So on emergency triage, it's not that big of a deal. It's only really on combat triage that it makes such a huge difference. But I would recommend training it to 5, either way, eventually.
Because it's
Okay.
fun.
And this is one of the big things like people get confused about. You've got combat triage, which are local reppers, and you've got emergency triage, and those are for repping supers and the full buffer, right? And it's important not to mix the 2 up, because if you jump a combat triage into a super fight, you're going to die immediately, and if you jump an emergency triage into a combat triage fight, you're just going to die slowly, you know.
Yeah. Any more questions? Whatever comes to mind. That sounds good. Well, an important thing is, okay, there's like a capital tackled. So you see pings go out and they ask for faxes. The first question you always ask is if it's an emergency or a combat triage, and that's very important, so you know what to do. If it's emergency faxes and there's like Titans tackled and they're getting blocked by 40, 50, 60, 100 threads, don't go to sub 1 or whatever. If you're multi-boxing, you will be in a triage channel on comms. You cannot hang out in main, and because there's a lot of coordination going on in the triage channel. Normally, people like Lucas and Rife will get priority speaker, so they can actually just talk over the fleet if that's needed towards headliner, and you listen to them. They'll assign the triage groups. Normally, people like me will then just do the grunt stuff and put it out in the MO2D or whatever is needed. And you jump in and listen. Don't panic. Just try to keep you cool. Especially after jumping in, if you don't do anything and you don't move, you're still invulnerable for a minute or half a minute. Under tie-dye, it's way more. So you have time to recool. There's the thing though. If it's an emergency, there normally will be one Cyno up, maybe two. Headliner will ask first, which fax does have a Cyno? And basically all of you have. So a couple of people will X up, and he will probably assign you to jump in first and be a more sturdy Cyno. So you jump in and you Cyno up, you start capping up and you triage immediately, because if you're in triage you have a way bigger buffer, and you just sit there. You probably don't even, you can try and grab whatever. The thing is, there will be 40, 50, 60, 100 faxes to you. I don't know if you ever seen the hitboxes on the Apostles, and probably the other ones. Those are huge. So what will happen is that at least a dozen of you will start bouncing away with 100, 200, 1,000, 2,000k per second, and you just drift off. The thing to not do then is go into triage. You just coast. Pray to the gods that they don't notice you. The thing is, if you bounce off alone, you're a single fax, 100k away, 120k away, and you're not a real threat. You can't rep, you won't triage, so the enemy might leave you alone. What you do in that case is you load a friendly overview. As a fax, you always should do that anyway. And you pick out a guy that has bounced to the other side of the fleet and warp to him at range. So for example, you're 80k away from the fleet and you've got a buddy that is 80k on the other side of the fleet, so say 160k away. If you warp to a 70 to him, you will end up 10k from the fleet again. This is from where you land. It's not from where you activate it. So starting the warp when you're 70k away and still coasting 1,000k per second is not really wise. You just want to like slow down to 200, 300. You're slow down enough. Then you select your buddy on the other side of the fleet and warp to him at range, so you'll end up in the middle of the blob again. That might be an issue if the whole grid is bubbled. If there's like bubbles and there's like 70, 80k away and there's no way to do it, you're basically fucked. Find a Celestial, find a Citadel, and just warp to there and try to warp back. But do not warp yourself back on your own. If you're 100k away and you can't get back to the fleet, warp to an Citadel and ask. Just be vocal on the triage comms and say, hey Rife, hey Lucas, I had to warp off because I coasted, I couldn't warp back, what should I do? Because if there's like bubbles 100k around the fleet, then it's pointless to walk to 100k back and then just sit there and not being able to do anything. So just
usually we'll see you. Usually we'll see you if you bump and tell you what to do. If we don't see you and you're not sure what to do and you're out of position, you yell. Don't just sit there quietly. It's the worst thing you can do. Like in any situation where you don't think you're doing the right thing, ask. Because triage is one of those things where we don't care if you ask stupid questions. There is no such thing as a stupid question, right? Because there's always going to be somebody not knowing what to do at any one situation or not being sure. You need to know that you're sure. So ask, and we'll tell you. You know.
Yeah, it's basically. I mean, if you've been in Sub 1, you know that's very laid back comms all the time. There's not a lot of chit chat going on, especially if it gets important. But in a triage channel, always be vocal. Don't sit there and not talking is worse than just saying, listen, I need attention, I don't know what to do, I made a mistake, I've done it myself, and just tell it. So the Triage FC is relying on you for doing stuff. So if you're not able to, because you bumped or you made a mistake, I've jumped in a fax without Strond. Don't sit there. Don't idle. Don't go, oh shit, and what should I do? Be vocal. Just tell them. And then we'll sort something out. Maybe you're close to someone that can share a fleet hangar. Maybe we can drop a can. Maybe there's people that are able to walk to a citadel and hand you over stuff there. But just tell the FC, because he's relying on you to do your thing. And if there's like 6 faxes and one of them is missing, that's 60% wrapping power or 60% soaking buffer that is missing. So just be vocal, just tell what's happening, and you'll be fine. It happens to everyone.
As well, in like fights where we're using combat triage, if you are being primaried, usually you need to be the focus of attention because you're the person that's soaking up the damage from the entire hostile fleet, right? So if you're being primaried, it doesn't hurt to let us know, because we can work around that. And if you're not tanking, especially, you need to let us know. Like, give us your situation. You know, oh, I'm fine on cap. I'm tanking fine, and that kind of thing, because it helps a lot when trying to organize things. You've got to remember, in situations like this, if you're on a grid with a fleet and you know you've got 60 friendlies on that fleet and there's 4 or 5 of you 4 or 5 people are probably going to be responsible for the fleet surviving, right? So it's really important to speak up and talk and let each other know what's going on, right? Because otherwise you just sat there wondering what the hell's happening, you know? And it just adds another level of competence to it, basically.
Yeah, you're in triage and you're soaking the damage, and especially in the combat triage, when you're not tanking it completely, like you're slowly losing buffer, the FC, the triage FC actually might go, okay, you go out of triage, so you cycle down, and then the moment you get out, before you get out, you already broadcast for armor or shield. People will pre-lock you, they can't rep you, but the moment you get out, you'll get the might of 2 or 3 other triage people remote repping you. And then the fleet can't kill you anymore.
A general rule of thumb is, if you're being primed, you want to triage red straight away and let people know. Because then we can reorganize things and get other triage in and repping you as soon as you come out. And once you're out of triage, you won't die. If you survive through triage, you won't die.
Any more questions?
There's a few things that I'd like to mention that you haven't, if that's okay.
Yeah, go for it. Can I grab a drink in the meantime?
Sure. Yeah, sure.
Thank you.
So the first thing that I'd always recommend, if you've just finished a fleet in a triage carrier, it doesn't matter what it is, whether it's emergency or combat triage, make sure you refuel it, get the cap boosters in there, make sure you've got strong Exile or standard Exile in your hold, ready to go. So the second you log on and enter that ship again, you are ready to jump out, right? Because it's the worst thing in the world if you're sat there trying to, get fuel, get strong, and a Titan's dying, right? Because 10 seconds can make a difference. If you can jump in immediately and get reps on that Titan, that's huge, right? So always leave the fax in a state that you're happy to jump in, right? And so I use my fax for moving, and I change the fit for moving. And as soon as I get there, I refit it to a full combat fit, right? Because otherwise, you end up spending a minute more refitting your ship or getting the charges back in the hull. That's really important. I can't stress that enough. The other thing with the Ninazu, not a lot of people have actually flown one in strenuous conditions before. I think I'm probably the only one who's used this fit in particular in those situations. One of the things I will say is the two most difficult things about the Ninazu in particular is it's got very little buffer, right? So you have to use your brain when activating reps. My suggestion is, as soon as you see you're being primaried, you activate your first rep. Because otherwise, by the time that rep cycle's over, you're going to be in low armor or dead already, right? So you've got to preempt the armor buffer. Don't just run all three at once, because on a Ninazu, and it's worth checking this, right? If you want to fly a Ninazu, undock on the test server and get shot by something. That is the most useful thing you can do, because it shows you exactly when you want to be activating your reps, how you want to be staggering, how you want to be overheating, and those are really important in combat triage in particular, when you want to overheat.
One thing to add to that, you have an auxiliary repper. Auto repeat off, auto reload off. You do not want to continuously, basically none of your reps, but in a tie-dye fight, I don't think there will be a lot of combat triage in tie-dye fights, but still, the auxiliary one, do not auto-repeat it, do not auto-reload it, because if you do not set auto-repeat off, it will cycle 2 or 3, and it will eat cap boosters, and the reload time is amazingly high. You can't use it after that. Normally,
no, basically,
but hold on. If you're on your last cap boost cycle on your auxiliary rep, it means that you're in real trouble. You do not want to be stuck with a reload cycle, and you just want to soak up the last cap that you have from your own ship, and then probably die. So don't do auto reload on the ancillary.
We're talking about capital ancillary armor repairs now, so that's using pace, not cap boosters, just to be clear. And it's 16 per cycle.
Yeah, but the reload time is so high.
The way you want to use the ancillary on the Ninazu really is you want to be using your 2 local rep much as possible. And generally, what will happen is your local reps will soak up most of the damage, but your armor buffer will slowly drop down. And once it reaches a certain point, you'll know when you want to activate your ancillary rep, right? And then your ancillary rep will fill your armor buffer back up, right? Because I think it's on the Ninazu, these reps rep 40% of your armor buffer. That's the non-ancillary ones. The ancillary one, I think it reps something like 55, 60. Although I'm not sure on that. So it's really important that you keep those. Bear that in mind. You want to be repping like 20 seconds before you actually need the reps. So you've got to preempt it a lot. It's quite difficult to do. And the other thing again is juggling cap boosters is really important. Really what you want to do is you want to have your fleet hangar open, and then just constantly be dragging cap boosters over to your Ninazu cargo hold whenever possible. Because otherwise,
because they don't take from your fleet hangar. If your cargo is out, then it won't refuel. So you have to keep juggling them from the fleet hangar into your cargo.
Yeah, so those are the two main things on the Ninazu. It's tricky to fly, but it's a lot of fun. If you don't want the hassle, the lift is just the lift is better, just more expensive. I fly the Ninazu because I enjoy it. It does mean you get into situations where you can tank 60 battleships quite easily, and then you realise that we've got volley damage, and then you're dead. So yeah, the lift is better from a numbers point of view, but from a cost point of view, the Ninazu is just it's brilliant.
Also, maybe one thing to add here, one important thing also for Triage, especially Logi in general, is manage your cap. Like, especially on facts, when you jump in, you have only like 25 or 35, I don't remember the exact number right now. So it's really important that you manage your cap and don't like waste everything with a few cycles of capital reps from the start at.
And that goes for remote reps as well, right? You don't want to be you want to be trying to stay above 33% cap, because 33%, if anybody doesn't know, that's your peak recharge level. So if you drop below that, you're recharging less cap. So you want to keep your cap at least at 33%, and that goes even if you have a cap booster. Don't go below that if you can help it. And generally, although this doesn't matter so much anymore, but when we were flying combat triage a lot, the rule of thumb is when you reach 33% cap, you tell the FC. But that's only for combat triage, because I mean there's like usually we have like 50 people in emergency facs, so it doesn't matter as much. The communication doesn't matter as much on that. But really, for emergency facts, it's more about if you don't know what you're doing or you're out of position that you speak up. But never be afraid to ask questions in sub 1 or the local channel we're using.
Yeah. The thing with the changes in session changes is now in tie-dye fights, when you activate your jump, so you right click and jump your ship to whatever Cyno there is. The moment the ship is taking cap or took the cap, start recharging. Even if the grid hasn't loaded yet, start chucking caps. It probably will not recycle or not reactivate, but at least you've got 5 cycles in on whatever ship you're flying. So the moment you see that your cap is eaten for the jump, start eating cap boosters and juggling, and they will auto recharge or whatever reload even over a session change. So
one thing that I find really useful that I don't know if anybody else does is when you're actually in the fight, I use my broadcast window for everything. I don't use the overview, but I'm not going to go into that. But a really useful thing to do is actually to look at the fight. And I know that sounds really dumb, but if you have effects on, and I usually have effects on, I don't recommend everybody does it, especially if you're dual boxing. But in combat triage, you do not want to be running an alt. You want to be single boxing, right? Unless you've got somebody on the field already, right? But if you have effects on, you can see what the enemy's firing at, and even though you might not be able to click on the enemy on the thing that's being shot at in space, you can tell when the turret effects switch to another ship, right? So when you see that switch in space, then you know you need to be locking up somebody for broadcast, because somebody's going to be getting hit, right? And it helps as well a lot to tell when you're about to be primary, because everybody will yellow box you, and that's something that's actually really useful whatever you're flying. Is if you're watching to see for yellow boxes, you won't, the chances of dying drop dramatically, right? It's the people who broadcast late that die. So if you can keep one eye on space while you're flying and watching for yellow boxes, that's beautiful. You'll probably survive. It's the people who broadcast late that don't.
Yeah.
Also,
1 second, Mr. Stricker, just to because it's the overview. The thing that happened yesterday. If you fly in the crab fleet and you have a fax, make sure that you've got like the Sarashaba overview, and have one of the tabs that shows friendly fleet or even friendly capitals. So when you jump in, you don't actually bother about whatever 40, 50, 100 Ferox is there. you're there to actually rep that Nidhogger or Rorqual or whatever is there. So if that person is not broadcasting for some reason, because he's white knuckling, he's panicked, he's completely dead, he's not on comms, you still have him on the overview, you can lock him. And that's very hard to find in space and with all the stuff, so make sure that you do have a friendly fleet overview tab.
Well, seconds matter is the thing.
Right.
When it comes to repping people in triage, seconds really do matter.
Also, what I wanted to add was, just in general, some other rules I usually use is like, at the moment you get shot or being primaried, stop repping other people. Save the cap for yourself, since you're the primary. It's something.
Yeah, once you get primaried, you stop repping other people. Period. Right? Because you never know what's going to happen 5 seconds down the line. A single remote rep takes a lot of cap. And say somebody puts a newt on you, and you, even in emergency triage, right? And somebody puts a newt on you, and you lose one of your hardeners. That's huge, right? So the second you start getting primaried, stop repping people.
Cool. Any more remarks, questions, anything? Remember, no question is stupid.
Yeah, I mean, it wouldn't hurt, actually, I think, if we, especially for the Ninazus, if we took a couple of dreads out, Neddy, and shot some people, so they can actually see, because I don't think people quite realise what the buffer's like on the Ninazu. You have to be on point, right? So I think if people had an idea of exactly how you need to run your reps, that would help.
Well, one way to learn is undock and walk to CA1.
Yeah, we can do that. Well, I mean, if a couple of people want to I'll fit out a dread and fly and shoot.
Yeah.
I can bring a second dread if you toss me a fit real quick. Oh wait, I actually have one. No, I don't have one.
You should have assets that you can look at and take.
I don't want a dread.
Can we kill this broadsword? He's got me infinite pointed on the fucking keep.
Dock. Oh shit. Can't dock, can you?
Yeah, just dock.
I can't dock.
You can't dock on this keep?
Not when you're infinite
He's pointed.
I'm heck pointed.
Oh.
Well, you're not allowed to fight on the keeps on the structure.
I was fighting myself though. I was fighting us though. I caught the Moros.
Just eject.
Yeah, that works.
That works.
What?
Like,
Yeah.
it's the test server, it don't matter.
And then just fit a new one. Alright, if you want to, I'm just going to bring the lift because I love that ship. Take your fax, undock, and walk to CA1, and we'll start challenging people to kill us. And then
yeah, if you wanna bring in a Nazu as well, and just
Combat Area 1.
yeah.
Yeah, what is that?
I just broadcasted it.
God, why is Fleet not on my short thing? Social, right? Yeah. Hi.
Yeah, I actually want to see how things are working with the Ninazu beforehand.
Yeah.
I actually recommend everybody do that if you're going to fly in Ninazu, because it's if you're used to flying other triage, you'd be surprised, right? And we'll actually have to stagger how many dreads we put on each, because otherwise it's just going to get blapped.
Yeah, I think. How many dreads do we have? Right, I'm preparing one. You have one drive. I think that should be more than enough, or should we get
That should be
one?
enough. It won't break the tank as long as people are using the brains, but like, you can never trust that, especially when somebody's first flying a ship. So.
I will also fit a capital newt so you can actually see how it is to get neuted.
Remember, this is kind of skewed. Normally, if we have time, we will jump into a system on an Astra or on a Citadel, and then cap up and then go in. But normally, you jump in to a Cyno, which means you're at 25% cap. So remember, you've got a little bit skewed capacity here.
It doesn't matter so much in the
No.
Nazu because of the way the thingy works, the cap boosting works. But yeah.
Can I bring my Titan and start shooting people? I don't mind losing it.
Give it a minute, because
We can rep you, you're not going to lose it.
I
You have a million factors on
Yeah, I was going to say, actually, they're about to have a go at my Titan on the keep.
Oh,
They're shooting it right now.
I might have already worked my Titan there.
I
You might not even need to warp off the keep to get fucking a fight there. Try to kill my Titan.
I mean, just W up and we'll come save you.
I'm on the keep.
Is that broadsword
Yeah, but
still
keeps a big structure W so we can land closer
still
to you.
pointing you?
We'll see what they actually do. There's only one fucking Moros that shoot me. It'll take it years, and I've got my fax sitting next to me.
just swap it to CA1 if you can.
I'm hack pointed.
Uh,
I might bolt myself closer to my refit for Haw and just fucking blap this broadsword.
yeah, I'd do that.
Right, I'm 10 kilometers off you. I approach you.
Same here.
It's fucking. It's so annoying. Like, I was shooting one of our own guys, and then this hick decided, oh, I'm gonna start fucking pointing you.
Just tell him to stop.
Well, no, but yeah, you shouldn't fight on the keepstar.
So, since my second turn is in the combat arena, who should I shoot first? Broadcast or shield? Makes it easier.
Yes. No, there you go.
If this Monos doesn't piss off, I'm gonna fucking DD it.
Is he still shooting you?
Yeah. Oh, he's never ever gonna fucking kill me. This thing's tanked like fuck.
Yeah, but should we kill it?
I'm just going to nuke the broadsword out,
Yeah. Wanna DD
and
in?
then you can dock up.
Yeah, I'll try and dock up. As soon as that point drops, I'll dock.
I'll fit a battleship out with 8 heavy nukes. Give me a sec.
I can refit myself as well when I get closer to my apostle.
I'm approaching you.
I just find this hilarious.
Also, I know Rive hasn't played this game in a long time, but he forgot to mention one drug, and it's this one.
Oh.
The hard shell drugs are actually really good because they have no penalty.
Yeah.
And they are on another slot than other drugs.
Yeah, so you can run both that and Exile at the same time.
Oh, here we go. They're undocking fucking Nixies. Oh no, I see what he is. He's a fucking It's all the same guy. He's undocking his fighter support unit. Fucking.
Alright, I'm going to try and nuke this broadsword out. Right, 8
Did
seconds
you
to
DD
lock.
him, or-
Start spamming dock. Are you aggressed?
No.
Okay, start spamming dock. You fine?
I'll tell you when I'm docked.
Oh fuck, I'm 9 kilometers away from it. I need to fit an MWD or something.
I'm in refit range of you now.
I'm going too hard too.
Okay, I will switch my damage to inner drive now since Lucius is clearly not breaking.
Well, he's about to get 5 Nixies on him or whatever. Oh, he's got like 20 Nixies undocked.
And arrow boys.
Well, be ready. It's spamming dock again.
Yeah, okay.
There we go. I don't think it's dropping. I'm overloading. Try that.
I'm holding.
Can
For
you
now.
link your Balgorn fit?
Oh, they've got 2 devoters on dock now.
Oh, have they? Oh, yeah, so they do, yeah. Lol.
Well, there's no revelation shooting me.
Just do move me in the system.
Yeah, move me.
Yeah, it's
Won't
it's
work
not
Yeah,
with
just
use
what it
aggressed.
They're not supposed to aggress you unless you're in a combat area or it's like pre-ranged.
Can the effects wrap Mercurist in like
Broadcast?
1 minute?
Broadcast?
So you said I should keep my cap at 35%.
dock up. Try docking up now. Different.
Nah, there's a couple of them pointing me now.
Nah.
It dropped actually. Oh no, one dropped, but there's Devoter now as well. Oh, here the. I'm getting nutted now by the fucking Nixies.
Well, don't fight on the Keepstar. I mean, you called it over yourself.
Well, I wasn't fighting any of them. It was one of ours.
Yeah. I didn't say them. I said don't fight. How's the ref?
1 second.
It's in siege.
And wrap
You can
me.
wrap it.
Yep, now
That's
now
good.
you can. Now you can.
The cycle.
Hold on. So you, I'm going to stop the recording now. Yeah, that should be fine. So you can't use move me while you're being aggressed?
No. We're on the test server, doesn't matter.
It doesn't
I don't
matter.
even own this, so this is a Leviathan I sold to Itachi.